We have the first reporters in here now, and I think some more will be coming in. But if we can bring our guest up on the screen, and we can get started shortly. Hi, great. Good afternoon, everyone. We're very pleased to have with us today Jonathan Whittall, the head of Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in the Occupied Palestinian Territory. And he's here to talk to us about the situation, in particular in Gaza. So, Mr. Whittall, welcome.
Thank you, Farhan. Thanks for having me. Farhan, I can dive straight in. Can we just do a sound check? Can you hear me?
Hold on one sec. We'd heard you before. Hold on. Try to talk again.
Can you hear me now? Farhan, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
We can hear you now. We can hear you now. We can hear you now. We can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Okay. Hopefully you don't hear me 3 times as well. So firstly, thanks a lot, Farhan, for having me. Good afternoon to everyone. To be honest, I wasn't sure what I could say in this briefing that could adequately convey the magnitude of the situation on the ground here in Gaza. So I've decided not to mince my words. And I guess this decision was made easier because I've recently, together with my colleagues, coordinated a mission in Rafah that uncovered a mass grave of medics. Sounds shocking to say. I can tell you it was shocking for us to experience. These were medical workers from Palestinian Red Crescent Society and the civil defense, still in their uniforms, still wearing gloves. They were killed while trying to save lives. They were being dispatched into Rafah as Israeli forces were advancing into the area. The ambulances were hit one by one as they advanced, as they entered into Rafah. The grave that they were buried in, that we found them in, was marked by the emergency light from one of their ambulances that were crushed by Israeli forces. Around the area that we found this mass grave, the ambulances, the fire truck, a UN vehicle, had all been crushed. The bodies of those killed were buried in the grave. I'm starting with this particular case because I think it's really emblematic of the point that we've reached in Gaza. What is happening here is it defies decency, it defies humanity, it defies the law. It really is a war without limits. And this case of our colleagues that were killed while trying to save lives is one horror in an endless parade from the past 2 weeks alone. We've had UN premises that have been shelled by tank fire, killing one of our colleagues and seriously injuring others. We've had international aid compounds and hospitals that have been hit. We've seen municipal workers that have been killed in humanitarian donated trucks. People have been bombed in food distribution points where aid workers have also been killed. Humanitarian warehouses have been damaged in strikes. And since the ceasefire collapsed 2 weeks ago, forced displacement orders are back. So in the last 2 days alone, we've had around 100,000 people that have been displaced out of Rafah, many of them fleeing under fire. I saw some of them in the same mission that I described here at the beginning, where we recovered the bodies of our colleagues from the PRCS and civil defense. We saw people running towards us under fire and being shot in their backs. As of today, 64% of Gaza is under active forced displacement orders or falling within the so-called buffer zone. That's 64% of Gaza that is today not accessible to the population. Nowhere and no one is safe in Gaza. My colleagues tell me that they just want to die with their families. Their worst fear is to survive alone. Day and night, and I don't know how much you can hear of my background noise, but day and night we listen to airstrikes shaking Gaza. Bombs are falling non-stop. Hospitals are overflowing with mass casualties. The one just a block away from me included. It's an endless loop of blood, pain, death, and Gaza has become a death trap. We cannot accept, and as humanitarians, I need to emphasize this, that we cannot accept that Palestinian civilians are dehumanized to the point of being somehow unworthy of survival. And yet today, unfortunately, marks 1 month without any supplies entering into Gaza. That's 1 month of no food, no fuel, no aid, nothing. Nothing has entered. So 2.1 million people are trapped, bombed, starved, and the consequences are apparent to all of us that are here. It's mostly apparent to the people that are living through this horror. The humanitarian crisis is quite literally spiraling out of control. Yesterday, all 25 subsidized bakeries supported by the WFP were closed, and people's survival is dependent on an aid system that itself is under attack, as aid workers are killed and our work is obstructed. And yet we're told, and I find it very difficult to hear, that Gaza has enough food because supplies have entered during a month-long ceasefire, following a year in which supplies were literally drip-fed into the Gaza Strip. Humanitarians here in Gaza are certainly inspiring, creative, but we're not magicians. We know how to deliver food, we know how to deliver water, shelter, medicine. We can do our jobs when we're enabled to do so. And we did exactly that at scale during the ceasefire. When the ceasefire was holding, we were delivering. We were able to deliver far more than we've ever been able to. Now we're collecting the dead bodies of first responders. I want to say that there's no humanitarian solutions to the problems that Gaza faces. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. There are no. I was just saying that there are no humanitarian solutions to the crisis that Gaza is facing. This crisis needs political action, and I believe that this needs to start with accountability. Aid will not and cannot compensate for the political failures that we've seen in Gaza. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that what is happening in Gaza is not going to stay in Gaza. We cannot let the rules-based order be replaced by one set of rules for some and another set of rules for others. But in closing, I do want to acknowledge that there is hope that remains. I've heard people in Gaza say that hope dies last in Gaza. So there is hope that member states will finally use their political and economic leverage to enforce international law. There's hope that a ceasefire comes into effect that stops the slaughter and frees the hostages. And I think there's hope that Palestinians will finally be seen as humans and that this cruelty will end. Farhan, I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to take questions.
Questions. First question goes to Amelie and then to Pam.
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondent Association for doing this briefing. I'm Amélie Bottolier from AFP News Agency. I have to say that it's difficult to hear the hope after your briefing, but anyway, sorry. You said that 64% of the population of Gaza is now under order of evacuation. Do you have any figure of the number of population that have been displaced since the ceasefire has ruptured?
Thanks for that question. So since the breakdown in the ceasefire, we have roughly 200,000 people that have been displaced. I think it's important to point out that this is 200,000 people that have been redisplaced. Many people in Gaza have now been displaced. I was talking to someone just yesterday who has been displaced 15 times from one place to another, looking for some kind of safety and finding none. So 200,000 since the breakdown of the ceasefire redisplaced, and in Rafah we've seen 100,000 people that have been displaced in the last days alone. The evacuation order that came into Rafah affected 97% of the governorate, and we've seen a large movement of people out of Rafah in the past days.
Thanks, Farhan. Thank you, Jonathan. It's Pamela Falk from U.S. News and World Report. You mentioned the aid that went in during the ceasefire. COGAT says it was about 500,000 tons that went in, 1/3 of all that's gone in during the war. Their allegation is that Hamas is diverting it. Is that what happened to that aid? Is it being diverted? Is it just a drop in the bucket? What's your sense of why that didn't get in? Thank you. I mean, it's not alleviating some of the issues now. Thank you.
Thanks. On this point, I can't think of anywhere else in the world where we have 2.1 million people that are entirely besieged. Would somehow, compensate for people's overall needs. It's the level of needs in Gaza are astounding. There's no way for people to cope through the commercial sector. There's no access to markets. There's no access to any kind of survival mechanisms that you or I would be able to access. So the assistance that entered in during the ceasefire is 100% essential, and we've been able to scale up in, as I said, in ways that we didn't imagine that we would be able to. But this is absolutely a drop in the ocean of needs in Gaza. It's been a relentless and brutal more than a year and a half now, and that would never be compensated by a month of assistance coming in. We see bakeries that are closing. I'm one of the privileged people. I'm able to access some goods, but we have difficulties ourselves in accessing certain items day by day. Things are becoming less and less accessible. So the reality is on the ground that access to subsidized bakeries run by WFP are shutting down. People are less and less able to access food, and the people that will be impacted first, and that are maybe the most invisible, will be children under 5. And that's what we're going to. That's what we worry that we'll start to see happening. So we need that assistance to be coming in immediately. 1 month without anything entering is just unacceptable, and it's a recipe for, as I say, the situation spiraling out of control.
And just, I'm sorry,
we had missed the first part. We lost you for the first part of what you said. If you could repeat that, please.
The first part of what I said was that I'm sorry, Farhan. Can you hear me, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. The first part of what I said is that I don't know of anywhere that I can think of now in the world where there's 2.1 million people that are entirely under blockade, cut off from any form of humanitarian assistance, with a commercial sector that's decimated, and that is expected to survive purely on humanitarian assistance entering into a besieged enclave that is where people are trapped and under bombardment. So the possibility of that being alleviated with 1 month's worth of assistance is not feasible.
And just the follow-up to the second part of the question, which was, is some of the aid being diverted away from civilians to leadership?
Thanks. As the UN, we have, and the humanitarian system, we have extremely complex and rigorous monitoring to make sure that aid is not being diverted. And that's in place throughout our operations. So for the humanitarian community in Gaza, I can confidently say that we have no evidence of aid being diverted from our programs and operations into to other places.
All right. Yes.
ATN News. Just a quick question. How far the UN humanitarian system with the aid in store can last without receiving any additional aid, since Israel is not allowing the aid trucks to cross it most times? How long you can survive with what you have?
We already need the supplies to arrive. The fact that the subsidized bakeries are already closing is already an alarming indicator. So there's no time to delay. You have to keep in mind that different supplies have different level of different items have different supply levels. So we may have certain items but be running out of others. That applies to medical supplies, to food stocks, to water and sanitation materials, shelter items. But the level of needs in Gaza, 2.1 million people that need assistance, again, that is never going to be alleviated through what we were able to bring in during the ceasefire. That was a critical period where we could scale up our assistance, but that needed to be sustained. What we did during that time was we reached the baseline, and not a very good baseline even. We needed to do much more. So every day since then that supplies have not been coming in, we're losing ground. People are going without essential items, without food in some cases. So it's already needed that humanitarian assistance comes in today. I don't think it's possible to say that there's a D-Day of X dates where humanitarian supplies run out. We've reached that point.
Yes, Shudaji with China Central Television. So we know that for the past few weeks, there's not only no aid get into Gaza, also some of your operations has been denied by Israeli authority. Did they give you any reasons why there's an increasing denial of the operations inside Gaza? And also, if I may ask this, the 15 humanitarian workers who died, Israel accused like some of them are militants. And also they are trying to portray some of the food has been kept by Hamas militants. Do you think this is a systematic attack or frame of the UN to link UN with Hamas? Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that. Those are important questions. In terms of the increasing denial of our requests, so what has happened is that as the military operations have expanded in Gaza, we have to coordinate more into more areas. So into Rafah, for example, when Israeli forces entered into Rafah, when evacuation orders are issued, we are then coordinating our efforts to reach those areas. And often, and this has been the case since the beginning of the war, those coordinated efforts are denied, impeded, or are blocked. So the increase is related to the expanding military operations on the ground and our increased need to coordinate in proximity to Israeli forces and the denials that are coming with that. And that is a problem. It shouldn't be the case. I do have to point out, and it links to your second point with regards to the ambulances, the coordination that we do is to actually help assist Israeli forces to fulfill their obligations under international law, to keep humanitarian workers safe, to facilitate humanitarian aid being delivered. The fact that we coordinate is something that should be it's an added way that we help them to fulfill their obligations. We shouldn't have to coordinate and we shouldn't have to fear for our lives when we move in proximity to Israeli forces. There should be distinction being made. Ambulances entering into an area flashing lights, white vehicle, UN vehicles with logos clearly marked with the flags flying. These are not military targets, and they, in the case of the PRCS, they have protected emblems, and this is not being respected, and that's extremely alarming. Whether or not the people in the vehicles were Hamas, as has been alleged, I know that one name was issued by Israeli authorities that didn't match the names of the people that were in the ambulances. The crew of the ambulances are people that we've actually worked with in carrying out evacuations of cases, medical cases from hospitals in the north of Gaza. These are paramedic crews that I personally had met before. They were buried in their uniforms with their gloves on. They were ready to save lives, and they ended up in a mass grave. With regards to whether there's a systematic effort to link our humanitarian operations to Hamas, I think that's probably a question that would be interesting to ask to others. What we know absolutely is that our work on the ground is intended to reach the most vulnerable and to save the most lives, and we're impeded from doing so. And that is what we need to focus on, and that's the problem. The fact that our colleagues and that I had to, and colleagues here in this building that I'm in, had to go and collect the wounded and killed UN workers last 2 weeks ago is unacceptable. Those were UN staff that were in an identified building that were known to be there and that were hit by 2 tank shells. This is regardless of the reason behind that. The outcome is unacceptable, and it needs to stop.
Hi. Thank you. Evelyn Leopold, Dag Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists. Excuse me, I'm getting hoarse. Where are you sitting right now that we see you?
Right now I'm in Deir al-Balah in Gaza.
What kind of an office is it? UN office?
It's a UN building. Yes.
Negotiated all with Kogat, with the Israelis, with Kogat and so forth?
Yes, so it's fully notified in all UN premises. We notify Israeli forces of the location, and it's confirmed to us to be deconflicted in their system, which means that it's known as a humanitarian location.
Okay. I see no other questions, so I would like once more to thank our guest, Jonathan Whittall, the head of office for OCHA in the Occupied Palestinian Territory, who, as he told you, is talking to you from Deir al-Balah in Gaza. Thanks very much, Mr. Whittall.
Thank you very much, Farhan. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it.
And for you in the room, stay here, and in just a short while, Stefan Dushariq will be here for the second part of today's briefing.